Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Some PLA OSINT. This is a year-end PLA Navy shipbuilding special, where we have a look at the new combat ships that have joined the ranks of the PLA Navy over the course of 2025. I will further put the situation into perspective by comparing those ships with the entire fleet of a few other selected naval powers. If you wish to support the channel and see more content coming, click like and subscribe. If you really love my content, you can click the thanks button for a one-time support or go to my Patreon and become a paid member. The link is in the description. Here it's a post I made on X or Twitter in June, making a prediction on the whole year's new commissioning. By then, only a small portion of 2 nuclear submarines and 2 Type 052D destroyers were commissioned in the first half of 2025. Now let's see how far they went in the rest of the year. But before we dive into it, a caveat up front. Knowing exactly when a ship is commissioned into the PLA Navy is difficult. So the result I will show here is my personal best estimate according to available open source information. China is extremely inconsistent in publicizing the commissioning of a new warship. We get ships commissioned with a great fanfare that are televised on national TV. Those are ships that tend to be associated with extreme national prestige, like aircraft carriers, Type 055 large destroyers or cruiser, if you will. There are other ships that entered service without the PLA Navy saying a word. And one of the early proof of the commission status is coming from regional rivals. Here we can see this PLA Navy's Type 052D destroyer, the DDG-158 Suzhou, photographed by the Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force in May 2025. This is the very first time the ship is known by online PLA watchers to have joined the Navy. Because of the issue of transparency, or the lack of, we would have varied levels of confidence of whether a ship is actually commissioned or not. With that much said, let's start the actual year-end review. At the time of recording, these are the ships that we have extremely high level of confidence that they have been formally commissioned into service. First, the Fujian is a no-brainer. Its commission ceremony was widely publicized with the presence of Chinese top leader Xi Jinping. In the footage of that ceremony, we can see another flat top that was made into part of the background. That ship is the Force Type 075 landing helicopter dock, LHD-34 Hubei. The ship was commissioned earlier this year and first publicly revealed in a promotion video celebrating this PLA's anniversary on August 1st. These 2 ships account for the absolute majority of new tonnage commissioned in 2025, with a full displacement of the carrier Fujian at more than 80,000 metric tons and the LHD Hubei at more than 40,000 metric tons. While the 2 flat tops mentioned before take up the absolute majority of tonnage commissioned this year, while the Type 052D destroyers account for the absolute majority of the number of hulls. The commissioning of some of these Type 052D destroyers falls under the extremely high confidence bracket, as they have already been featured in official public reporting such as Chinese state media or Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force. They are the DDG-158 Suzhou that we mentioned before, DDG-166 Weinan. This is a photo published by PLA Southern Theater Command in early April, showing a live fire exercise. The ship in the background is the newly commissioned Weinan. In DDG-125 Changzhou, this is an image published by the PLA in early August this year, showing the ship conducting an underway replenishment exercise. DDG-127 Zhumadian, this is from a newsreel from Chinese state media on the ship as a new member of the fleet, which was aired on November the 1st, 2025. This newsreel mentions no specific commissioning date, but vaguely describes it as middle of this year. In another video posted on Chinese social media as early as late July, we can see a small ceremony was held at the Dalian shipyard, sending off the ship to join its unit. In this video, we can see the pennant number was already painted, indicating the PLA Navy's acceptance of the ship. The actual commissioning should have happened between the dates of these 2 videos, likely in Q3 this year. So we can see that being officially reported by Chinese state media is a lagging indicator of a ship's commissioning, unless otherwise specifically mentioned in those reports. Adding 4 destroyers into service in just 1 year is definitely a feast for a modern navy. But there are more for the PLA Navy this year. Here we can see another 3 Type 052D destroyers being captured and posted on Chinese social media without any official reporting. They are DDG-126 Heze, 176 Lo Di, and 128 Ganzi. Heze was photographed to have its pennant number painted in late June, though the chance of it being commissioned is very high. Lo Di was seen at a naval base that belongs to the PLA Southern Theater Command in early November, with its pennant number painted, so it is also very likely to have already been commissioned. The latest Type 052D that was spotted with pennant number painted is the DDG-128. Here in late November, photos emerged of it leaving the Dalian shipyard heading to its home port. It is yet to be seen if this ship will be commissioned within the rest of 2025, but that is definitely with high probability. If that is the case, by the end of 2025, the PLA Navy would have formally added 7 Type 052D destroyers into service. With 64 large VLS cells on a single Type 052D destroyer, just these 7 ships commissioned this year would add 448 cells to the entire PLA Navy. Even ignoring the size of each cell and the capabilities of missiles that go into the cells, which the Chinese ships tend to have advantages, this number is significantly larger than the total VLS cell numbers of the entire Italian Navy at around 300 and the entire French Navy at around 350. While compared to the US Navy, the 448 number of VLS cells from these 7 Type 052D destroyers is similar to that of all new Arleigh Burke-class destroyers commissioned starting from the year 2022 to end of 2025 at 96 cells per ship and 5 ships with a total of 480 cells. This is already some formidable firepower, but the PLA Navy did not stop here. Despite observing the 2 Type 054B frigates having the pennant number painted in late 2024, and I was guilty of treating that as the indicator of commissioning, the formal commissioning happened this year. The lead ship, FFG 454 Luo He, had its commissioning ceremony held on January 22, 2025, while her sister ship, FFG 555 Qinzhou, kept a low profile. The exact commission date is unknown, but the first appearance in Chinese state media was on April 12th. In terms of armament, these frigates carried 32 VLS cells each, so 2 ships offer another 64 cells. Although those cells are smaller than the 850mm ones on the Type 052D destroyers, but the most propagated number indicates that they are 650mm by 650mm, which is roughly the same size as the American Mark 41 VLS cells. Of course, from what was known, these cells on the Chinese frigates are not as versatile as the Mark 41 cells. But with the latest HQ-16F with a more than 160 km max range and rocket assist torpedoes, these cells do bring serious firepower to the table. Despite the 2 Type 054B frigates already entered service, the PLA Navy is still building and commissioning their predecessor, the Type 054A frigates. The older and more mature model offers the PLA Navy the ability to expand its fleet at a significantly faster pace compared to solely relying on a new design. In my earlier post this year on X or Twitter, we can see a few Type 054A frigates in advanced stage of construction across 2 different shipyards. And now we know at least some of them are already in service with the PLA Navy. The Type 054A frigates have started to join the PLA Navy since 2008, and there have already been 40 ships commissioned prior to 2024. So the commissioning of further new ships would no longer get any headlines. But still, official sources, mostly PLA unit-level social media accounts, or local government-run media, will reveal their existence in subtle ways. Here, we can see this shot from a mess hall of a PLA Navy ship published in August. The billboard on the wall is depicting local cuisines from a city called Fuyang. In the same report, we can see this picture. What we can see here are a flame deflector from a slant launcher of anti-ship missiles and a Type 1130 close-in weapon system mounted on the side of the ship. These two factors strongly indicate the ship in the report is a Type 054A frigate. This is how we can infer with almost certainty that this is one of the newest batch of Type 054A, the FFG 519 Fuyang, and it had already entered service by August 2025. There are also other such examples. Here, local media from the city of Yuxi is introducing a new PLA Navy warship that is named after the city. In this article, the ship was said to be commissioned in October 2025. And here, an image published by Linfen Daily, a government-affiliated local newspaper for the city of Linfen, showing gifts sourced from the city were sent to sailors stationed on the Type 054A frigate named after the city. Here, we can see a greeting letter sent by the municipal government and party committee to the active service members serving in or from veterans residing in the city of Ordos, and the sailor stationed on the PLA Navy ship Ordos. From what we know about the PLA Navy's naming convention, the ship Ordos is likely to be a frigate, so another Type 054A. A summary of what we have talked about so far: 7 Type 052D destroyers, 2 054B frigates, and 4 054A frigates. With 64 large VLS cells on each destroyer and 32 Mark 41 equivalent cells on each frigate, we are looking at a total of 640 VLS cells commissioned just in 2025 alone. And that number is at the same level of the total VLS cell count of the entire French and Italian navies combined. But is it the final tally for the PLA Navy in 2025? Not necessary. The year is still not finished, and we might see reports or official news releases about additional commissionings happening. For example, the first ship of the second batch of the Type 055 large destroyer or cruiser may have already quietly commissioned. This image was taken in June 2024 during her maiden sea trial. Now, 18 months after, it is more likely than not that the ship has already entered service, or is about to enter service soon. If that is the actual case, we're looking at another 112 large VLS cells added into the PLA Navy's inventory, bringing the 2025 tally to 752 cells. Let's do another brief summary. With a slightly generous estimation, assuming all aforementioned ships have already been commissioned, the PLA Navy has added 1 aircraft carrier, 1 amphibious assault ship, 1 large destroyer or cruiser, 7 destroyers, and 6 frigates into its surface combat fleet within 2025. On top of the massive addition to the surface fleet, at least 2 Type 093B guided missile nuclear attack submarines, or SSGN, were also added to the PLA Navy. The Type 093B SSGN is a significant milestone, as a handful of new features that were once unheard of on earlier PLA nuclear submarines are added, such as quieter pump jet propulsion, the vertical launch system, etc. Some U.S. naval analysts, such as Jerry Hendricks from the Center for New American Security, estimated the quietness of these new boats is on par with U.S. Navy's improved LA class. Past U.S. assessments hadn't been kind to the PLA Navy's older nuclear submarines. Here is an illustration published by the U.S. Office of Naval Intelligence in 1996 on the noise rating of a selection of world's nuclear submarines. Back then, China's Type 093 SSN, which was to be first commissioned in 2006, was ranked noisier than the U.S. Sturgeon or 636 class SSN that first commissioned in 1967. And now, with the Type 093B assessed to be at the improved Los Angeles or 688I class, we can see a significant improvement was made. With 24 VLS cells, each capable of launching land attack and anti-ship cruise missiles, the two new Type 093B submarines added another 48 VLS cells to the PLA Navy, bringing the total VLS cells added to the force to exactly 800 in 2025. Now, let's put the 800 VLS cell count into perspective, comparing it to that of other naval forces in the Indo-Pacific region. Just for the sake of this exercise, I will treat the ships commissioned into the PLA Navy in 2025 separately, and have it and the PLA Navy as of the end of 2024 as two different entries. Here, we can see that the PLA Navy in 2024 is the force with the most VLS cells in the region, with a total of approximately 4,400 cells. The second place goes to the US Navy's 7th Fleet, at about 1,500 cells from both the surface and the submarine fleets. The third place is the Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force, trailing very closely with about 1,450 cells. At fourth place is the Republic of Korea Navy at slightly above 1,000 cells. Then the fifth place is the Indian Navy with slightly below 1,000 cells. And the PLA Navy ships and boats commissioned in 2025 alone, with their 800 VLS cells combined, would rank number 6 in the Indo-Pacific region. Note, as of now, the comparison is extremely naive by using a simple count of all VLS cells, without distinguishing by size and missile loadout. In this mix, we have huge, multi-purpose cells such as the PLA Navy's 850mm wide UVLS, or ROK Navy's KVLS-2, with cells that go beyond 900mm in width. Both of these systems are big enough to be capable of launching ballistic missiles. Also in the mix, we have the small, single-purpose cells that fire the Barak 1 point defense SAM with a maximum range of 12 km, or 7.5 miles. One way to adjust for this is to remove those smaller single-use VLS cells that are unable to fire long-range SAMs or surface attack missiles, namely the Mach 48 cells and Barak 1 cells. This adjustment would move the PLA Navy's 2025 new addition up to the 5th place. After this adjustment, this comparison is still an oversimplification, as the actual firepower of a Navy is determined by a vast amount of other factors. But it can still somewhat depict the general trajectory. In a single year, the PLA Navy commissioned the equivalent of the entire combat fleet of a major power in the Indo-Pacific, or the equivalent of the combat fleet of multiple major European powers combined. If there are no major surprises in the last few days of this year, we have pretty much completed the summary of the new combat ships that joined the PLA Navy in 2025, and we can take a bit of more time looking at 2026 and beyond. For the surface fleet, there's one Type 055 large destroyer or cruiser, the Anqing. It's at the advanced stage of sea trials. She might be commissioned in early to mid-2026. There's another Type 052D destroyer at the similar stage, the DDG-177 Chongchuan, also being on track to join the PLA Navy at similar time. On top of those two ships, there are 4 additional Type 055 and 4 Type 052D at various stages of construction, totaling 10 destroyers. These ships are projected to join the PLA Navy through 2026 to late 2027, or early 2028. Furthermore, from this screen captured posted on Chinese social media Weibo, the tenders for ship number 39 to 43 of the Type 052D destroyer are also out. If construction of these 5 ships start in 2026 or 2027, we could expect them to join the PLA Navy by 2030. Additionally, the PLA Navy is still building further Type 054As. Here, it's a photo taken around May 2025, showing one new Type 054A in primer. Given the early stage depicted in this photo, this ship is definitely not among those commissioned in 2025. The word on Chinese social media is that the Type 054A production will finally cease at hull number 50. In 2025, we have already seen hull 41 to 44 commissioned into service, and according to accounts on Weibo that are more familiar with PLA's shipbuilding, all the remaining 6 ships have already been launched. So we can reasonably expect those 6 ships will join the PLA Navy between 2026 and 2027. So between 2026 to 2030, we can reasonably expect 5 Type 055 large destroyers or cruisers, 10 Type 052D destroyers, 6 Type 054A destroyers to be commissioned. And during this period, we will also be witnessing the commissioning of the first Type 076 amphibious assault ship, the commissioning or at least sea trial of the first Type 004 nuclear aircraft carrier, and maybe another improved Type 003 conventional aircraft carrier. For the submarine fleet, to date, apart from the 2 already commissioned Type 093B SSGNs, another 8 are already launched into the water. If we assume a speed of 2 boats a year, by 2030, these 8 boats will all have joined the PLA Navy. Combining all these known future ships and boats, the PLA Navy is looking to add another 1,500 large VLS cells to its fleet at minimum. To further keep in mind, these future additions are exclusive for traditional manned platforms. We have seen strong evidence of the PLA Navy making investment into developing unmanned or optionally manned naval platforms with substantial firepower. Here is a recently leaked photo of a trimaran, likely unmanned submersible vessel developed for the PLA Navy. According to naval analyst H.I. Sutton, this vessel might be armed with VLS cells. If the PLA Navy decides to pursue such a concept at scale, we would see another major source of growth of the PLA Navy's firepower. Additionally, we have also recently observed in China a mock-up or a proof of concept of a civilian cargo ship carrying containerized VLS tubes among other sensors and weapons. We also don't know if this concept will be pursued by the PLA Navy, but it can also boost its firepower if adopted. Finally, to close off, the progress of the PLA Navy's shipbuilding does contrast the recent news coming out of the US. After more than 2 decades of several troubled attempts at innovation with the Zumwalt and the LCS, the US Navy seems largely to have lost the craft of launching successful shipbuilding programs. It has been struggling at managing the more conventional Constellation-class frigate program to the point of having it canned. The new underwhelming FFX program aims to replace the Constellation, and the very interesting Trump-class battleship concept are unlikely to produce viable solutions to the challenges posed by the PLA Navy in a reasonable time frame, while drying up resources that could be directed to more practical efforts. Of course, the US Navy still likely holds the overwhelming advantages with its naval aviation and undersea capabilities. But the PLA Navy is also closing the gap on both fronts with 2 carriers likely under construction, a plan to operate 9 carriers, 8 to 10 Type 093B SSGNs launched in a span of 3 years, and more advanced Type 095 SSGNs being worked on. It will take more than a Christmas miracle to see a reversal of the trajectory of naval power development between the US and China.